Welcome to Next Generation, brought to you by Salute. I'm Mark Reynolds, your host, and I'll be joined by a series of industry-leading experts throughout the series. In each episode, we'll be going beyond the headlines to unpack the forces redefining data centers and speaking with the people shaping it, scaling it, and powering it. From AI-driven demand and sustainability pressures to the evolving talent and technology powering this industry forward, one thing is clear. The data center industry is in the midst of rapid transformation. At Salute, we see this in real time, from advisory and design through to build, commission, integration, operations, and refresh. The entire lifecycle is being reimagined to meet the needs of an AI-enabled world. The reality is simple. Those who adapt fastest will lead what comes next. So this podcast is about exactly that, what's next. The next generation of infrastructure, the next generation of technology, and the next generation of talent driving it all. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Next Generation podcast, powered by Salute. We are live from Data Cloud Congress in Cannes 2026. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Andy and Mike, I'd love for you both to introduce yourselves, and we'll get into a good dialogue.
Sure. My name's Andy Lawrence. I'm the Director of Research at Uptime Institute. I'm assuming most people will know Uptime Institute, but we're a long-standing company that developed the tiers, resiliency standards, and a lot of other operational standards, sustainability standards, and so on in the data center industry. My particular role, I lead research for Uptime. So we have a membership, a global membership, and we have subscribers, and we also have a very interested internal group who want to know what is going to happen next in the world of data centers at quite a serious, deep engineering level and technical level. And my job is to try and herd the various cats of researchers to lead us into insights that hopefully avoid bad decisions.
How easy is that to do, to herd?
It's good. It's not hard because kind of research is like that. You need people to go off in different directions. It's one thing you need to fight against is this kind of industry waves of hype waves, if you like, where suddenly everybody's into this or space data centers or underwater data centers or something. And you have to say, actually, it's all very interesting, but we need to focus on the fact that the temperatures are getting too high in the data centers, and that's what people really need to know about.
Bring it back to the core.
Mike Jones, I'm the president, and I lead global operations at Salute. Been there 5 years. At Salute, we're 2,500 people across the Americas and 15 countries in EMEA. So the teams that I support are doing advisory work, design, build, commissioning, FM ops, projects, and capital refresh.
And that's expanded a lot since Salute had started, correct?
It sure has. Even just 5 years ago when I joined, we had 300 people. Wow. So exponential growth, I think you'd call it.
Yeah, that's great. It's fun to be part of that, and with you, of course. All right, so first question, and this is meant to be conversational, and we'll get into it, and might drill into some areas. So as operators are scaling rapidly to support this AI, HPC, cloud growth, we talk about the industry redefining resiliency. And that's across the entire data center lifecycle that Mike just talked about, starting at commissioning all the way through eventually the refresh aspect. So, how is the industry redefining this resiliency? Maybe I'll start with you, Andy.
Interesting question. I mean, I'm first of all going to say I don't think the industry is redefining it per se. I mean, resiliency kind of has a dictionary definition, which means, you withstand adverse circumstances, and also you recover quickly from them. So that hasn't changed. You just have to make sure you design basically are as up for as much as possible. So a lot of the uptime standards, it's about concurrency of the power supplies, it's about fault tolerance, recovery. It's primarily electrical. It's so that hasn't changed a lot. I mean, there are some things that have changed. So, effectively, believe me, we look at the tier certifications a lot and the way that it's been done, and we're not finding that it needs to change a lot. But there are some things that are changing. I mean, for example, liquid cooling, that does throw up a lot of challenges. It gets hot very, very quickly. You've really got to, you can't not have full power redundancy supporting the liquid cooling. And the other thing is, when you are building that amount, when you require that amount of power, you're probably going to have to start having on-site power and more on-site storage. That presents a lot of extra challenges that we as an industry are not really familiar with. But it also means that when you come on and off the grid, the swing to the grid is way more than it ever was. And that means the issues of resiliency are no longer site-based. They're now involving the grid and your contractual relationships and what the substations are capable of. And also the grid is dealing with other data centers, which means if you all behave in the same way, which is a problem, if you all come off the grid at the same time, every time there's a frequency wobble or something, you've got those kind of issues. So it's become a much more complicated, wider problem than it was. But the core principles within the site, I don't think have changed a lot. We could get a little bit into batteries and whether that's changed it, but essentially, I don't think it's changed it an awful lot.
And what do you?
I would agree with Andy. It's a lot more complex. People are building gigawatt sites. They're not 10 and 20 megawatts anymore. I think the key, and I don't think the standards need to change, but I think that the key to success is working between the operator and the developer to ensure that what's designed is actually going to perform as intended when it goes live, and it does have spikes in energy and it's got liquid going through the loop. So in our minds, the important piece of this puzzle is that we do the commissioning with a proper handoff to operations, and we know for the most part, and there's going to be a number of things that are not predictable, but for the most part, we know how the environment's going to operate, and we're prepared with an operating model that covers 99% of the different situations that will occur, and we do have the resiliency with another loop of PG25 in a storage room, because it's going to take you months to get it if you don't have it, and the leak detection and the chemistry management and all the things that are new in these environments. If you're the best prepared you can be, you're still not going to cover everything. So it has changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
But it's still resilient if you're.
And what are you seeing on the SLAs in terms of what Salute is being asked to cover there with the resiliency and downtime?
I think what's different in a direct-to-chip environment around SLAs is that we have shared responsibility for operations, right? There's 3 different demarcs that can take place in an infrastructure, so a lot of times the operator has a set of responsibilities which is different than the developer, which is even different than the tenant. And those 3 parties all have to work together because my output may cause an SLA with your input.
Yes.
And I'll need to explain how I gave you what I was required to provide, and then work together to find where the root cause is, right? So it's not just one provider anymore, it's up to 3. I think similarly, a lot of the developers and tenants are pushing the SLAs to the operator, and especially in the triple net lease and some of the other scenarios we've seen, there's a lot more investment in capital in the building and certainly in the IT infrastructure, so the cost of downtime is in the millions, per hour. So we've been asked to explore some, insurance opportunities to be able to cover those. It's definitely an interesting time.
This issue of the demarcation between the IT and the facilities, and again, what the even going right up the software stack to a degree. We've had to think really long and hard about that because all of these standards have been developed where there's an assumption, there's a clear delineation between facilities and IT. But suddenly NVIDIA's coming in and they're saying, this is how we want to do it, and we're going to define the standards and so on. We're going to come right out into what really is traditional facilities territory. At the same time, maybe the worst people in the world to be looking after liquid cooling are IT people. So,
Yeah.
maybe I'm overstating that. Some of them are very good. But, and a lot of them just don't want to do it. But the products are often coming where it's very integrated with the IT. So it's causing them quite a lot of rethinks on the SLAs. The standards are much the same, but it needs some quite hard thinking, especially during commissioning process.
I think there's several more metrics. Look back 5 or 10 years ago, and if you had 2 sources of power and you had cool air, at 4 feet high, and maybe if you were fancy, you had containment. Now we're talking about liquid pressure, liquid quality, liquid turbidity, the whole leak detection. There's several more metrics to manage.
Yeah,
and
right.
then when you have a leak, there's 3 types of leaks that can occur, right? It could be a drip, it could be trickle, it could be a gush. Like, the world is a lot different. It's not. It sure makes air cooled look a lot easier.
Getting the people who know all of this and getting them trained up or retrained, that's a real major challenge. So that is a resiliency issue, because if you haven't got the people and you haven't got them trained and they don't know what to know when something happens, then that is a resiliency risk.
Yeah, that's probably one that a lot of the industry isn't really thinking about it from that perspective, is the people are the resiliency risk. Let's go back to energy, just being power constraints being a growing concern in the industry and or challenge, I should say. How important is the energy resilience relative to traditional uptime metrics? Andy, that'd probably be a good one for you.
Yeah, again, although my answer is kind of, again, it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
I mean, you could never run a data center without power. That certainly hasn't changed. The problem is, there's obviously a shortage of power, for new data center capacity. So that's a major problem. And the other thing is, the data across the world shows that the grid is becoming gradually less resilient. I mean, the outages are occurring more often, frequency changes, and different issues on the grid. So, I think the real challenge for the industry is the only way to meet AI at scale is to have on-site generation, which just raises so many issues. There's no great technology that doesn't come with a lot of problems. A lot of the things that get talked about, like SMR, fusion, geothermal. I mean, they're all going to play a part at some point. But right now, it's the choices are very heavily fossil fuel based. Batteries, I don't think anybody's really thinking batteries are the solution for backup at scale. It's just too big and complex and expensive. You're probably going to have grid power and on-site power at scale and make them work together, or perhaps gas. So this is the next 5 years. We'll see how all this plays out. But you can't have downtime. I mean, one question kind of interesting you haven't asked me is AI maybe more tolerant of downtime? And I think a few years back, people going, oh, well, actually, nothing really happens because the AI just checkpoints, it stores the model, and then it just restarts. I mean, specifically training. But now, what is fairly clear is that people aren't spending all that money thinking we're only going to train. The inference is getting very much mixed up with it. So you need it to be highly resiliency. But also, can you afford to have, 300 million worth of GPUs sitting there, or even stop starting constantly? So I think we're seeing the industry saying, you know what, AI needs to be as resilient as everything else. This is the sense I'm getting.
Yeah, just to add on to what Andy said, most of our newer customers are they're generating energy behind the meter, but they're also talking about when the grid's going to be available. And what's going to be interesting, I think, is when the grid power's there, who's going to cut over, or are you just going to stay behind the meter because it works? It's probably more resilient. You've invested, I don't know how many millions in capital to build that. In my opinion, and I've heard it from a couple experts in the field, those that go behind the meter are always going to be behind the meter. It's impossible to cut over. And we heard somebody even earlier today who thinks they're going to have both behind the meter and the grid.
You start to get into a transactive relationship where you are an energy supplier on the grid, because and if we say in Texas as an example, where where there were situations where no one had power except the data centers because they were all on generators during the big freeze a few years back, and then the legislators said, you know what, we can't really have people freezing while the data centers are just humming, so you've got to start to share your power. So
they're going to become a utility.
I think they're going to become, so having that amount of power, I think the utilities aren't going to be saying that's nothing to do with us. They're going to say you're part of us.
Yeah. So who is defining? I mean, we talk about we're evolving, haven't quite figured it out. Who is responsible for defining these standards as we move more towards AI around resiliency? I mean, is it a group of companies? Is it the Uptime Institute? I mean, who is kind of leading this definition of what these standards and operational best practices are?
I think it's the operators.
Okay.
When you look at the ecosystem of building an AI high-performance compute environment, there's chips and there's CDUs and the energy piece, and none of those people are building the standards because they're essentially selling their product, right? They don't tell you how to operate it in the larger scheme of things. So as a FM provider, we're developing those standards, and there are none that are really out there in the industry. So we're proudly developing about 300 different EOPS, MOPS, and SOPs. We have a pretty solid framework and program that goes as far as leak detection and chemistry management and things like that. But it's tricky to be running at scale when we're designing the car as we're going down the road, right? Yeah. So this is still the early days, and we think we're developing best practices and we're developing the standards, but I know others are doing the same thing. But they don't exist. And maybe with some of the hyperscalers who've been running some of these infrastructures in the past, they developed them for themselves. Yes. They're not widely available to most of us in the industry. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Uptime has a historic position of developing standards, and there are thousands of data centers worldwide follow the design. We also have operational standards, so we're a little bit competitive there, I guess. But also, to your point, the hyperscalers, a lot of them have their own cookbooks, if you like, or playbooks, would be a better term. But also, I think there are a lot more interested parties now. There are now insurance companies who've got a major stake in what happens here. There are investors who've got a major stake. To give you an example, the financial services regulators are very interested in how data centers are run. I mean, they have and we've worked with a lot of the financial services companies to talk about, a level of detail that you would not expect a financial services regulator to be talking about, temperatures and humidity and this kind of thing, because there are so many stakeholders and there is so much at risk. Even government departments, starting to say, we want to know how data centers are run. We want to know what's in them, and obviously sustainability is a big issue for them as well. So, I'm going to say a mix of the market, a mix of regulators, a mix of standards people, and a mix of stakeholders, which is probably how it should be in a big mixed economy.
I'm glad you brought up sustainability. So I want to just ask a question around sustainability and resiliency, and are they inseparable in this new modern digital infrastructure?
Interesting way of looking at it, inseparable. I mean, I think a lot of people felt sustainability is one thing and resiliency is another thing. Yes. So sustainability and resiliency, the way that I've often heard it in the past is that actually they work against each other. You want more resiliency, and therefore you're going to be less efficient and in some way less sustainable. And certainly, our team and our experts are saying, no, actually you need to think of them together and aspire to achieve both of them together.
So the inseparable.
But I will say that in this rush, this gold rush of AI to build at scale, I think sustainability somewhat dropped down the list. But I think sustainability is, I personally don't think it's something you can just throw out. You know, it's got to come back. A lot of sustainability goals, in any case, were too ambitious. But so I think they are not necessarily entangled.
Yeah.
But I think if you want to achieve excellence over time, you've got to do them together.
Awesome.
And sooner or later, the governments will come back afresh with democracy behind them and say, you can't run these badly. You can't run them inefficiently.
So we have to be
prepared for it.
For that. That is coming. So we have to be prepared to for that, you know, mandate from government entities to come down.
Yeah, I think it's always been.
Yep.
Right now, there are different imperatives. There's national security. There's GDP. There's all these things, and AI is like top of that, and sustainability's low, but it will come back.
It will.
Yeah, I would agree. Sustainability is low, but what I am seeing is those that operate data centers around the world know that it's going to come back up the list. Those that are in their first data center experience, sustainability is not a priority, but certainly those that have been around a while and know what's potentially coming, those that operate in Europe have a head start. There's still a huge gap, but we've seen an incredible demand from the mature and experienced developers for services like we provide around energy and sustainability management and programs, not just reporting, but actual programs that help tighten that gap between sustainability and resilience. So it's coming, and there's a select group that really need to try it for everybody else, and then the rest will follow, and certainly the government push is going to help. But there's a gap today, but it's going to get smaller.
Well, we're about wrapping up. Just any final thoughts you'd like to share around the topic of sustainability and/or resiliency?
No, I mean, the only thing I would say is that I think it's really important that these data centers have been built for 25, 30 years. They've got to be built to the highest standards from the outset, whether it's resiliency, whether it's sustainability. And a lot of the things like the finances, the return on investment, the IT, they all operate to shorter timescales. But, this is an opportunity to, you have to think long term.
Yeah, I'd agree 100%. Just look at where we are with AI. We're at the tip of the iceberg. This is just starting.
Yeah.
Every week there's something new. Every day the data centers are getting bigger. People are doing 5 and 7 gigawatts, and we're talking about 15-year FM contracts. This is not the new norm. Hasn't even been established yet. So to Andy's point, you're building these things for 20 or 25, 30 years. It has to be right. They have to be resilient, but I think sustainability definitely has to be part of the game. It's awfully tough to go back in the future and to retrofit and to put in a program that doesn't line up with what was designed and built. So I'm a big advocate for sustainability. And to Andy's point earlier in our conversation, a lot of those promises made a couple of years ago about net zero, I don't see them completing the mission. But now's the time to re-engage and set a proper program and be responsible in what we're doing here.
Good. Andy, Mike, thank you for joining me on our Next Generation podcast.
Thank you.
Great having you as guests. So we hope you enjoyed the Next Generation podcast powered by Salute. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast.